Chairing all the sessions here today and speaking on this stage here tomorrow, and my role is simply to make sure that Jayson doesn't overrun and handle some questions a bit later on. If you raise your hand when you've got questions, I'll bring this microphone round to you when Jayson's finished. Over to you.
So much. My first question is just, can we get the slides up on the screen here? Thank you. But first of all, everyone that's here in person, thank you so much for joining. If you're watching online, thank you for joining as well. If you're watching this on record in the future, thanks for your time. I'm here to talk about the talent time bomb. You're going to hear where that theme and term has come from in a moment, because we conducted some fantastic research with nearly 1,000 HR decision makers about their main pain points, the issues they were facing, what they're doing in the talent acquisition space, and the fear that they expressed that if they don't change how they hire and bring people into their businesses in the next 2 years, they're going to experience severe commercial consequences. So I'm going to share some of the findings from that study, some of the highlights and snippets, and then there's a fantastic case study baked in. So there are 2 speakers, but there's only me stood here. So due to some travel challenges and issues with the strikes on and then off again, we had to go to our plan B. So Hannah from Canonical is absolutely fantastic. And our plan B was to have some embedded videos, so we still get the value of the case study. So as we present, you're going to hear from me. Then we're going to hear from Hannah some of the snippets of how they're recruiting at Canonical, how they've changed how they hire, how they've resisted some of the pressures to cut back on selection stages, to cut back on candidate evaluation, and the advantages that's bringing. And then I'm going to talk about some of the advantages of their approach, and I'm going to leave with some reflections and recommendations. So first of all, very quick reminder of the agenda. I'm going to talk about our latest research, some of the highlights, what I think it means. I'm going to talk about the talent time bomb. There's some quite surprising statistics I heard around what people are actually doing in recruitment, the number of hires that aren't working out, and the pain that they're experiencing by matching people to jobs they end up not enjoying and not being particularly productive at. We're then going to hear about a Canonical case study, and I'm going to reflect. So who are we? My name is Jayson Darby. I'm the Director of Science at Thomas International. I probably have the best job in the company. I get to look after our psychology, our psychometrics, our data. It's really, really good fun. As a business, we are well over 40 years old, and we've been evolving over the decades, constantly adapting our technology, the psychology methods and theories that we build into our products to track talent management changes over time. So we work with companies around the world. We've got a massive global footprint. We're in about 60 different countries. And it gives us a huge advantage when we do research like this, because we get great response rates, and they're typically quite geographically dispersed. So that's a little bit about me. I'm now going to hand over, virtually, pre-recorded, to our second speaker. So this is Hannah from Canonical. She's going to give an intro to who she is and their company, and we're going to hear from Hannah throughout.
Hi everyone, my name's Hannah Newborn, and I'm Global Head of Talent Acquisition here at Canonical. I joined our business at the start of 2022, and I have a total of 18 years experience working in TA across both the financial services and technology industries. We were founded in 2004, and we're the tech company behind the operating system Ubuntu. We have people based in 62 countries globally, which for our size of just under 1,000 people is a huge footprint. We have a really strong brand presence in the engineering open source community, and typically we have around 400 open positions at any one time. So talent attraction is really complex in an organisation that's globally remote. We're needing to assess and compare talent from different geographies and cultures equally. Providing a fair playing field is not easy. We're hunting across the globe, so it's not unusual for us to see months where we receive in excess of 25,000 applications. We're seeking to identify the best people for our roles, regardless of their location, regardless of the original opportunity that they applied for, and regardless of cultural differences that may be presented on a CV, and to remove any emotion from our decision-making process.
I think you can hear me. The reason we have the Canonical case study here and Hannah supporting us is because they've bucked a lot of the trends. They have very high candidate volumes, but the way they recruit is quite different to some of the trends we're seeing in our research. So I'm going to lead into the research, and I'd like a very small bit of audience participation. want to understand what you're experiencing today. So can I just ask you to raise your hand if you've currently reduced the length of your recruitment processes, or if your organization has? Can you just raise your hand if you have? Interesting, there's a mix. Have any of you changed the recruitment methods in the last year, 2 years or so? Again, interesting mix. Raise your hand if you're experiencing more soft skill shortages. So we're talking about how people deal with their emotions, their communication skills, their ability to negotiate and influence, their resilience. Is that you're experiencing shortages there? You're trying to hire people who don't have the ability to do those things right away. And the final one, hard skills. So the ability to code, the ability to work with certain software. Are you experiencing hard skills shortages? Slightly less, but some experiencing both. That really helps anchor for me as a speaker, because I kind of see in the audience, are you experiencing the same pains we saw in our research? So we spoke to just over 900 HR and talent acquisition decision makers. This is the talent time bomb. It's the name of our research reports. You'll be able to scan this and get access to it after this talk. We learn a lot, so I can't do justice to the full report in this talk. I'm going to pull out some highlights. So just over 900 people in organizations ranging in size from 250 to 5,000 across a range of different territories. They're a good mix. Some managed recruitment completely internally, some internal, some with agency, and a small group completely outsourced it. But this is what we were looking at. How were they hiring? What practices did they use today? What were some of the major pains they were experiencing? Like, was it short skills gaps? Was it hard skill gaps? Was it something else? We also wanted to understand, was it hard or soft skills? What were the actual experiences like? Was it finding people, developing people towards them? And their perceptions of their talent culture. So, culture is how things are done around here, thinking about an organization overall. When we think about talent culture, it's how do you hire? What are your hiring practices, your processes? How do you handle and deal with your candidates to make sure they have a good experience? And what the research showed is that everyone is trying to solve a lot of different things, and it's coming at a cost. So this really surprised me. 74% of the people we surveyed, it's nearly 1,000 people, said they were compromising on candidate quality to fill roles faster. That's really frightening, because that has terrible consequences for the individual themselves. So if you're reducing time to hire, yes, a really important metric is getting people in the seat. You don't want to have a vacancy for so long, you're not getting value, it's reducing productivity. But if you're sacrificing candidate quality to get someone in faster, it's not really a win. You've lost something there. You've got someone in, you've ticked the box. That person might not be a good fit for the role, they're not going to be that happy, your business probably isn't going to see the productivity gain from hiring them. They might not stay, they might not perform, it has longer term consequences. Reducing time to productivity, this is a pretty bombastic stat from HubSpot. I think they're looking at the global economy here, but the cost of low productivity is in the trillion and a bit. We hear this all the time, even in the UK context. We hear about developed economies like the UK, Western Europe, North America, struggling with productivity because people are in jobs, but they are not engaged, they're not performing as well, they might be lacking skills to really succeed. It's the real challenge. Increasing engagement. We want people to be happy and healthy at work, enjoying what they're doing, because we know there are so many positive outcomes from having engaged employees. But again here, 6 hires weren't working out in some way. So again, of those, there were real issues with candidates actually working out, either at all or in some areas. So what it was suggesting to us is that there's a real mismatch between what organizations are looking for and who they're actually bringing in. And if you're bringing in people that were never going to be a good fit in the first place, it's not going to be great for the business, it's not good for that person. And if you're trying to reduce attrition, you've stacked the odds in your favor against you, because you're going to lose people. If you're not a good fit for a role, you don't feel like you can perform well, you're not enjoying it, you're probably going to look somewhere else. So we were seeing that the rush to reduce time to hire was having a real negative impact. We wanted to focus more on how do we help people get productive? Because again, a real core message coming through was that organizations that focus on time to productivity were succeeding faster because they were finding people that were a good fit for the role, that were going to enjoy the role and be productive. And it avoids some of these challenges. But how? Which probably leads on to the most selfish part of my talk. Why do we utilize psychological science in the solutions that we create at Thomas? It's because psychological factors often relate to and predict things that we consider to be soft skills. So if you're thinking about you want someone in sales to be comfortable negotiating and being more assertive, they're psychological factors. If you're thinking about a manager who is fantastic, but they sometimes struggle with the way they communicate with their team because it's too high level, it's too direct, there's not enough clarity, those soft skills are often linked to personality characteristics, behavioural characteristics, which we can measure. And we can measure them quickly and easily, which means that they can really help people weave them into their selection processes. We saw this in our research again. So this is just summarising, similar to what I asked you, are people experiencing lots of soft skill shortages exclusively, hard skills exclusively, or a bit of both? And as you can see, a large chunk of people are experiencing hard and soft skill shortages in equal measure, but there's also a very large group that are experiencing a lot of soft skill shortages. And soft skills, they often relate to people's potential to succeed. So if it's how someone likes to learn, how they communicate, how they build relationships, how they deal with setbacks, change, all of these areas can help people hit productivity targets faster. And here's some of the core science. This is a summary of a very famous piece of research looking at selection measures that predict success. If any of you have terrible handwriting, it doesn't matter. Might help you in some regards, but it will not predict how well you're going to do in a particular job. Neither does your previous work experience. It's useful. It's not a piece of information to completely disregard. But previous experience isn't the greatest predictor of whether you're going to succeed at something else in the future. Many different selection measures are far more predictive. Some of them are psychological factors. So things like behavioural styles, personality styles, cognitive ability, your aptitude, how well you deal with numbers, with words, different information is really, really great, especially because they're additive. So if you're looking at personality traits and cognitive aptitudes, you're continuously adding in information that's going to help differentiate whether a candidate would succeed. If you wrap that up with some structured interviews, so you're asking questions based on a competency framework, or you've got some structure around what you're drilling into, you're stacking the odds in your favour to find candidates that are going to have the psychological makeup, the preferences, the motivations to succeed in a particular role. Hiring for a commercial role, you want someone confident, someone assertive, someone that can close a deal, someone that's got the speed to follow up quickly. They're psychological factors. So these are the sort of things that we're drilling into. I'm now going to share, again, another element of the case study from Canonical to hear about what they're trying to achieve, because they're trying to buck the trend. They're pushing back against reducing their hiring programs. They're not chasing time to hire. They're focusing on finding people that are going to be the right fit for the organization so they hit productivity faster. So we're going to hear from Hannah again.
When we first started hearing phrases like war for talent and the Great Resignation, I think we all assumed that it was going to be a temporary state. Broadly speaking, hiring processes were dramatically reduced and there was just a race to hire talent. Down the line, we're seeing that there are situations across the industry where the wrong talent was selected, where getting the position filled took precedent over ensuring that the right person was being selected longer term. We decided to buck the trend and be much more deliberate about our hiring decisions, and we really stand strong on our principles to ensure that we're bringing our current people the best new team members that we can.
So as you can see, they wanted to avoid that trap of chasing time to hire, because while it ticks a box, you get people in, the cost longer term could be enormous. And obviously at Canonical, as Hannah mentioned in the opening, they have enormous candidate volume. Hiring program that was bringing people in that weren't a good fit, that weren't well matched, that problem could explode because they are bringing so many people in that might not be a good fit. It's such a key area for them. And I just want to come back to this stat. I called it out at the beginning around success of new hires. So one of the questions we put to our participants was, thinking about the last 2 years, what proportion of the people you hired fall into certain categories? So 28%, the hire didn't work out at all or isn't working out today. So either someone wasn't working out and have now left the business, or they're not working out. That's not great, to be mild about it. those individuals were brought in, they were excited about the job at one point. They were happy coming into the interview. You made them an offer. You were happy that they were joining. They started onboarding. They started their training. But something wasn't right in terms of the match. And so bad for the organization. You're either managing underperformance. The individual themselves is not going to enjoy that process. They're going to feel as though they're not succeeding. It's going to impact their engagement and well-being. And then the business falls into a pattern of hiring to backfill, because it doesn't work out. So then you try again. You're chasing time to hire because the last person didn't work out. They didn't pass probation. Now I'm back to hiring again. And you're chasing time to hire. You're chasing a metric that is important, but it's a bit of a trap if it's the sole thing you're focusing on. 32%, the hire is working out in some areas, but not all. This is a bit more nuanced. Someone can join and be successful, but there's a development area. That's not necessarily a huge negative. But again, there's still a concern here that there are almost a majority of hires coming in that aren't working out. You'd kind of hope years, someone that you've spent this time and investment on is working out. So I just wanted to highlight there is a real organizational and individual impact of putting someone into a role that they are not best suited for. Poor for the organization, reduces your productivity, traps you into a cycle of hiring to backfill. And there's an individual here. There's somebody on a performance program or somebody not feeling productive, someone not enjoying the job. That can be really toxic, and we're trying to make people productive and happy with the work that they're doing. So now I'm going to share what they're doing at Canonical. So this is an overview of their model, how they structure their team and how they manage such large candidate volumes to maintain rigor in their process. So this is their model, but I'm going to click through so Hannah's going to walk through what they do.
I'd like to share with you our hiring model. In essence, our hiring leads run our recruitment, and they do this from the very start of the process all the way through to verbally offering the candidate the position. There are 94 hiring leads that sit within our business today. Most importantly, these people are not the hiring manager. They manage the whole recruitment process themselves, including building their own talent pipelines and scheduling their own interviews. It's their role to take the hard decisions on who we hire and to really look for the evidence as to why the person is the best for the role that they're hiring into. In other words, they are more impartial decision makers that are looking for evidence rather than being swayed by other pressures. They hire as a true partnership. They meet every Friday to celebrate the hires that they've made that week, and they also use that session to really drive and develop our interview and recruitment process. Most importantly, they pass candidates round and they share their talent so that we can ensure that a candidate lands in the right role here, not just rejected because they applied for a role that doesn't play to their strengths. You might be wondering what my team do. Well, in short, we're not recruiters. We are basically the psychologists behind how we assess and select our talent. We are the behavioural experts behind our process. Our decisions are formed by deep analytics from our workplace engineering teams. Whose judgment do we trust? Where is bias creeping in? Where are we falling behind in the process? And how good did our decision making turn out to be? We work a lot with automation with our ATS tool that enables stage transitions to eliminate much of the heavy lift from these hiring leads.
So what does that look like in practice? So the team at Canonical are really focusing on candidate evaluation. They're resisting the urge to rush time to hire because you're going to hear a little bit more about what they do. They don't just evaluate candidates for the job they've applied for, they also compare them to other roles they have in the organisation where this person might be an okay fit for a commercial role. They may be better suited to work in a customer success role because they're good in the commercial sphere, but they're more customer relationship oriented rather than trying to win new business. So they've got a pretty rigorous model, and Hannah's going to walk us through what that looks like and how she weaves in different selection methods. So this is their process at a high level. Hannah's going to talk through some of the highlights.
There are 3 critical parts to our process that really help us achieve success. Our written interview levels the playing field for global talent. It looks at motivation, communication skills, and does a deep dive into technical or specific specialist skills a candidate has, probably not listed on their CV. It also looks at behaviours right back to the early years, regardless of the level of candidate, and it seeks to understand the levels of curiosity and an inherent drive that that individual will have. The written interviews are anonymously reviewed, so we invite all of our team members across the organisation to help us assess at this early stage. Then we have our GIA assessment that helps us understand trainability. So how quickly can a candidate process new information and absorb this to make the right decisions? And as this assessment is norm-based, it helps us form a view against a broader population of people. And then finally, the talent interview, which is conducted by my team, is a deep dive into a chronological career history review and a review of the candidate's PPA assessment that is a likely predictor of their behaviour should they join our organisation.
So you can hear that this is getting to a level of it's like absolute best practice. They are measuring multiple different things at many different stages on a global basis with such a large hiring pool. Smaller organisations or organisations that don't have as many candidates can still get the same value from applying some of these stages into how they're hiring. Because I'm just going to come back to, if you're looking at scanning CVs, you maybe have a few interviews, but there's nothing else objective you're adding in. It could be a case study exercise, it could be psychometric assessments. Anything objective on top is helping you find people that are more likely to succeed and be happier and more productive in a role. At Canonical, they've taken it to the absolute extreme. They are weaving in so many different to make sure they find people with the best possible chance of success. And it's really working for them. So again, they've held fast. You know, many of you in the room said you've had to cut back on the amount of time you can spend hiring. We've seen so many people saying that they are finding candidates aren't working out, that there's real challenges there. So there's a cycle that we're falling into that's not working. Canonical kind of held their nerve. They've got the luxury of candidate volumes to do this in some areas, but these are some of the measures of success that they've experienced. It's really working out for them, and here's why.
You'll be wondering what our measures of success are that tell us that this brave approach is working. Well, since adopting this approach, we have seen an increase of 159% in the number of hires that we've made. Our applications have increased by 637%. Of course, some of this is attributed to the fact we have more roles open. But we've also seen a 10% reduction in our poor performers, with our September performance review results showing not one single person in the bottom 3 of the 9-box grid. We also experienced an 11% increase in peak performers in our review process in September. That's the top middle box of our 9-box grid.
So it's working out for them. And part of this is we partner with Canonical because we want to make the objective measurement piece easy and accessible. So make it easier. You know, we at Thomas International develop software that basically helps you weave this sort of insight into a selection process. You're looking at measuring behavioral styles, personality styles, cognitive aptitudes. These are the areas that Canonical are weaving into their process to help match people to the jobs they have open, to find people with the potential to succeed in the role, to be productive, to be happy. So we make it easy. We measure the same core psychological factors for everybody, but the way it's adapted is by what you tell us. So is it a senior hire? Is it a graduate level hire? What's the pace of the environment they're working in? We ask you to spend 5 minutes telling us a bit more about the environment and the nature of the role, so we can make the best possible recommendations back, that we can show you of the candidates that have been included in this program. These are the people that have the highest chance of succeeding and being happy and productive in the role. And I've mentioned the individual a few times because this isn't just something we are doing as HR and talent professionals, people that are involved in this and the consequences of it. So part of our software flips back and is facing the candidate. So we've all applied for jobs in our careers and not heard back in a good time frame. We're asking people to complete assessments, tell us about their personality styles, complete some cognitive ability tests. But we want them to learn something about themselves. So the moment someone completes one of our assessments, they get feedback. It tells them about themselves. It gives them developmental tips and guidance. That's the moment they complete the assessment. So even if they don't hear back from the hiring organisation for a week, 2 weeks, or unfortunately possibly longer, They got something from the moment they completed one of the assessments in our software. And if they don't get the job, which is the majority of people, the majority of candidates are going through a funnel, someone is hired, many people didn't get the job, we want to increase the chances that they come away from that process and they feel as though they've had a positive experience. So Canonical is a fantastic example of how you can weave measures like this in to avoid chasing time to hire and focus on measuring things that will help you find people that are going to get to productivity faster. I'm going to close in a second, but here's some advice from Hannah.
My advice to you all would be to step back from a panic approach to hiring. Stop worrying about what the competition's doing and really try and focus on what your business need is. If a candidate wants to join you, they'll find a way to balance their other opportunities. Of course, you're going to need to make sure that you've got a fairly strong employer brand for this. Consider who the right decision makers are in the business and really focus on making sure that those people are trained and, most importantly, invested in hiring for the success of the whole business. And finally, consider the data points and the evidence that you require to make the right hiring decisions. Is the evidence that you're collecting during the assessment and interview process serving a purpose? And is it truly best predicting future performance of the candidate when they join your organisation?
Yeah, I'd echo all of those points. And I'd say if you've listened to anything I've said today from our research or some of the other comments I've made and gone, that's us. We're cutting back on our hiring processes. We think we're bringing people in that weren't a good fit. We're experiencing some of this pain. Come and talk to us. If you think you're getting it right and you're actually avoiding some of these issues and you feel like you're really leading from the front and going, actually, we think we've solved this, come and talk to us because we're here to learn just as much as we're here to exhibit. We want to understand what you're doing. Come and chat to us more and take the assessments. So you'll see everyone is in very electric fuchsia with TikTok because of the Talent Time Bomb on their t-shirts. Our stand is H24. Come and chat to the team. Some of them are here in the audience. They've got cards. QR code, scan it. We're talking 5 minutes of your time. You can experience the candidate experience yourself now, and then we can talk to you a little bit more about what challenges you're facing. But take the assessment. You have absolutely nothing to lose, but I promise you, you'll learn something insightful about yourself, and you'll experience what it's like through this process. This is the team. We've got a wonderful group of people. We're very chatty. We want to learn from you as well. We want to understand if you're experiencing some of these challenges, what you thought about the talk. Come and tell me you loved it. Tell me you hated it. Tell me why. And try it for yourself. So you can scan now if you want to. So we have these QR codes on our stand. We've got team members with cards that have them on as well. We want you to experience what it's like for the candidates, but also consider how you could improve your own hiring practices. Because it feels like lots of people are really struggling here. We don't have a silver bullet solution to solve everything, but we can help. You've heard from Hannah at Canonical. Come and chat to us. We really want to learn. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you everyone watching online as well. And if we've got some time, take a question or two. Thank you.
Questions, please raise your hand.
Thanks.
Do we have any questions?
Hi, thank you. Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Hello. I was wondering about, through the automated processes that you're describing or the in-depth processes that you described, what kind of impact it had on the diversity profile of the recruiter?
Ooh, so I won't be able to give a really thorough answer specifically on what to track DE&I. I know that they take it very seriously and monitor it. I'd have to ask Hannah specifically about how they track DE&I stats throughout their selection processes, because as she said in the beginning, because they're hiring globally, they have their team of in-house psychologists monitoring the use of assessments and monitoring the candidates moving through, because it's fantastic that they open it up to a global candidate pool. The risk of bias and adverse impact creeping in then is enormous. I can speak to what we do on our side. So with the assessments that we build into the software itself, we're constantly researching adverse impact trends. So we track different organisations. So Canonical is an example, Harvey Nash is another from a few years ago. We track the use of our assessments through a talent pool and see if there's any adverse impact against any minority group or any protected characteristics. So, for example, let's say you had a profile for a salesperson and we said, people with this personality trait are more likely to succeed in sales. That's wonderful. what happens if women are 10% less likely to have that trait? What happens if people from certain cultural backgrounds are less likely to have that trait? Suddenly we've baked in disadvantage into the core science of it. So part of that solution comes into how we design the assessments themselves. When it comes to the automated ATS system that Canonical use, I can't give that full answer, but I'd recommend reaching out to Hannah on LinkedIn and be happy to go into a bit more detail about their process. I've covered the top level of it, but I'm sure she'd be happy to give you a bit more detail there. Thank you.
Any more questions from anybody?
If not, thank you all for your time. Come and chat to the team, take an assessment. It's 5 minutes of your time. Thank you so much.